ever boarded a train and thought, what keeps this massive thing from, falling apart?
Right. It's like you trust it to get you from point A to B, but,
But who's actually making sure it's safe?
well, today's deep dive, we're getting into that. The folks you never see on the train, but they're essential rolling stock assembly inspectors.
Catchy title, right?
Well, it's way more interesting than it sounds. We're talking about the backbone of our transportation system.
And we've got some cool sources to guide us this time. RoleCatcher, a website all about careers. They've got these in-depth guides.
And they really break down what an inspector actually does, which I was curious about, honestly.
Yeah, because it's one of those jobs. You hear about it, but can you picture it?
Not really. But RoleCatcher lays it out, and it's a lot more high-tech than I expected.
Like what? Give me an example.
They talk about using lasers to measure, like tiny tolerances in parts. Ultrasonic testing to find microscopic cracks.
Wait, lasers and ultrasound on train parts. Okay, now you've got my attention.
Right. It's not just guys with wrenches anymore. Though those are important too, don't get me wrong.
But this is like next level stuff. And speaking of levels, RoleCatcher talks about the career path too, right? Like, how do you even get started in this if it sounds interesting?
That's what I like about it. They lay it all out. A lot of times, high school diploma, get your foot in the door. Then it's on-the-job training, working your way up. Junior inspector experienced, senior.
So there's room to grow. You're not just stuck.
Exactly. Each level comes with more responsibility. You can end up leading a whole team, even working with the engineers who design the trains.
So you got to have good people skills on top of the technical stuff, I'm guessing.
For sure. But I think the inspectors who really excel, the ones who love this work, they've got that puzzle-solving mind.
What do you mean?
Like finding a flaw, that's just step one. The real skill is figuring out why it's there, how to fix it so it doesn't happen again.
So you've got to be detail-oriented, but also big picture thinking.
Exactly. It's about preventing problems before they even happen. And RoleCatcher has all these examples of inspectors doing just that.
So it's not just about catching something that's already broken. It's about anticipating what could go wrong.
Totally. And that's where it gets really interesting, I think. RoleCatcher goes into some cool specifics about the actual inspections.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so picture this. You're inspecting a train wheel.
Seems simple enough. Round, metal, what's the big deal?
Right, that's what I thought. But then RoleCatcher goes on about all these insane performance tests these things have to go through.
What do you mean?
Think about it. That wheel's got to withstand tons of pressure, heat from the brakes, years of wear and tear, and we're talking thousands of tons riding on it, right?
Okay, yeah, suddenly a tiny crack doesn't seem so tiny anymore.
Exactly, and that's where the high-tech stuff comes in. They were talking about ultrasonic testing.
Ultrasonic, like sound waves.
Yeah, basically it's like an X-ray, but with sound. It can see those hidden flaws inside the metal that you'd never spot with the naked eye.
Wow. So it's not just about knowing how to use the tools, it's understanding what they're telling you, why it matters.
And all the paperwork that goes with it. RoleCatcher mentions these inspectors have to deal with a ton of regulations. Everything's got to be documented perfectly, every little detail. Talk about pressure.
Yeah, no room for error when it comes to safety like that. But what happens when things do go wrong, even with all that checking? Does RoleCatcher have any examples?
They do. They were saying that problem solving is a huge part of the job. Like one inspector noticed this weird wear pattern on some parts happening way faster than it should.
Uh-oh.
Turned out it wasn't just wear and tear, it was a design flaw.
No way.
Yeah. And because this inspector was paying such close attention, they actually ended up changing how they built the part, preventing even bigger problems down the line.
So it's not just about fixing what's broken, it's about making things better.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're responsible for the safety of everyone on that train, maybe even future passengers, just by doing your job right. That's got to be rewarding.
Yeah, knowing you're playing a part in keeping people safe, that's huge. And RoleCatcher mentions that it's not like this is a dead-end job either. You can really build on this experience.
Totally. Once you've got that inspector mindset,
Yeah.
it opens doors. RoleCatcher actually has this whole section on adjacent careers, things you could move into.
Like, what else can you inspect besides trains?
Well, you could specialize, right? Get even deeper into just engines, for example. They have guides for rolling stock engine inspector, even aircraft engine inspector.
Whoa, so the skills transfer from trains to planes.
Apparently so. Or you could go the motor vehicle engine inspector route, even broader, like product quality inspector. It's all about that attention to detail, spotting problems before they become disasters.
So it's like the possibilities kind of branch out from there. Makes you think a little differently about like starting with one type of inspection, but
It could be a stepping stone, yeah. And RoleCatcher does emphasize that certifications can give you a real edge in this field.
that makes sense. So it's not just about, it's about having those credentials to back it up. What kind of certifications are we talking about here, though?
Well, they highlight a few. For the overall quality control side, there's the American Society for Quality ASQ. They've got things like the Certified Quality Inspector credential.
Okay, so that's like proof you understand those principles no matter what you're inspecting.
Exactly. Shows you're serious about it. And then there's got to be stuff specific to trains.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
RoleCatcher talks about the Federal Railroad Administration, the FRA. They've got their own training programs, certifications, all about rail safety specifically. Having those on your resume is huge. Shows you're not just guessing, the rules inside and out.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. It's like anyone can say they're good at spotting details, but that certification proves it. Okay, last question before we wrap this up. RoleCatcher, do they have any tips on actually, getting your foot in the door, making those connections?
They actually do. They're big on professional associations, which I thought was
This
interesting.
networking, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. One they specifically recommend is the International Institute of Marine Surveying.
Wait, marine, as in boats.
I know, sounds weird, right? But think about it. Inspecting a ship, it's got a lot in common with a train. Huge, complex machines, tons of regulations. You got to find those tiny flaws before they become disasters.
So the principles translate even if the vehicle's a bit different.
Exactly. And they list a bunch of other organizations, too. Some are even focused on cargo and logistics, since that's a huge part of the rail industry. It's about seeing those connections between fields.
And I'm going to guess LinkedIn gets a shout out.
Oh, absolutely. They're all about building your online presence, connecting with people in the industry, joining groups. It's about showing you're not just looking for any job, you're passionate about this stuff.
Man, this has been eye-opening. We've gone from lasers on train wheels to, like, the International Institute of Marine Surveying. Who knew?
Right. It just goes to show, even jobs that seem kind of hidden behind the scenes, there's this whole world behind them, full of technology, challenges, and honestly, a chance to make a real difference.
Totally. And with platforms like RoleCatcher out there, it's like it's never been easier to explore those paths, even if you're starting from scratch.
Exactly. So much cool stuff out there.
So next time you're on a train, maybe take a second to appreciate those rolling stock assembly inspectors. They're the ones keeping those wheels turning safely.
To safe travels indeed.
And to you out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time when we explore another fascinating corner of the career universe. Until then, keep those wheels turning.